Welcome to Visualize, the podcast where collaboration fuels change. I'm your host, Chris Baker, and each week we'll explore incredible connections between nonprofits, businesses, and the community. This is a space where we highlight inspiring partnerships, uncover strategies for creating meaningful impact, and share stories that show how working together can make all the difference. Whether you're a nonprofit leader, a business owner, or someone just passionate about building connections, this podcast is for you. Welcome back to Visualize. Today I have Nick Sproul.
Yeah.
And he is one of the board members of Children's Harbor. So I would love to have you explain to a little bit about your personal business.
Sure.
And your journey on how it brought you to become a board member at Children's Harbor.
Well, I'm a real estate broker, but just kind of rewinding back to college days, I went to Florida State, and I chose marketing and management because I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. But I just figured business is broad. But while I was there, I did something that I learned. I got sold on this internship, right? That I learned a lot more from doing what I got recruited to do there than I learned in college. So I got recruited to this company called Southwestern Advantage, which recruits college kids and teaches them how to sell by sending them out into the world to do door-to-door sales 80 plus hours a week.
Oh.
So that's the best and worst sales job you can ever have, right? Like,
it's immersing you into the position
yeah.
right away.
Yeah. And so, but that was my first taste of like real sales, and I was doing it 85 hours a week in different parts of the country over my summers when I was in college. And that company doing door-to-door sales in college paid my whole way through school at Florida State. So I kept doing it for a few more years, right? So when I graduated college and I was done with that, I went into the music industry for a little bit. I was working in recording studios, and the last studio I was working in was DJ Khaled's studio, We the Best, in North Miami. You didn't know that's where this was going to go.
No, I had no idea that was where this was going, but all right.
But while I was there, I missed sales. I missed being able to grow and get paid truly for how hard I was willing to work. And I wasn't finding that in the music industry in the same way. It's more like the corporate world where it's harder to move up unless somebody moves out of their role. So that's why I got my real estate license while I was working in a studio, was just because I was like, well, I'm in the studio at night. Maybe I can do real estate in the day. And joined a Keller Williams office and was there for a few years, and the real estate thing took off and sold about 65 homes in the first 2 years.
Wow.
That's
so pretty busy.
I was busy. Yeah. And that was a very cold calling, cold leads type of way of generating business, which I was used to from doing door-to-door sales. But after 2 years in business, I got my real estate broker's license. And then I got a call from the same company that taught me how to do door-to-door sales in college, this Southwestern company. And they're like, hey, I don't know if you know this or not, but we've opened up real estate brokerages in like 10 other states, but we really want to open one in Florida. So I partnered. That is why the company is called Southwestern Real Estate in the southeast part of the country. So I partnered up with them and opened Southwestern Real Estate, and grew the business from 2018 to now. We now have a team of real estate agents throughout Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, Orlando, Gainesville, and Jacksonville that I coach and mentor, and I'm still very active in the sales part of real estate myself. Building that business was very much like a networking based thing.
Yeah.
And when I was in Leadership Hollywood, which is like similar to Leadership Broward, if you're familiar with that. And I heard about a program there called Guardian Ad Litem.
Yeah. Okay.
And I was drawn to it because I had finally gotten to a place in business where I felt like things were going really well. I'm building this brokerage, everything's on the right path. And then I hear about this thing where there are these kids who have been removed from their homes for one reason or another.
Correct.
Whether it's abuse or neglect or drugs in the house, or whatever the case is. And I was drawn to it because, a lot of the beginning of my life was kind of tied to that. And now I had this opportunity to get involved with something and give back. Through being involved in that Guardian at Litem, and so Guardian at Litem, should I probably explain what that is?
It might help for some viewers and listeners out there, yes.
Yeah. Guardian at Litem is a program where you visit with a kid at least once a month who has been removed from their home. You are checking in on them from a mental standpoint, but also like a physical health standpoint. Is this kid got clean clothes? Are they going to the doctor? Are they going to the dentist? Are they being taken care of where they are outside of their home?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you're also trying to connect with them and help them talk through some of the things that they're going through emotionally and mentally as a teenager or a kid who's been removed from their home. That led me to, at my second Guardian case that I was at, I got introduced to, I had a case that introduced me to Children's Harbor. And I had these 3 siblings that were at Children's Harbor, and I'm going to Children's Harbor to meet with them once a month and hear about what's going on in their lives. Are they going to school? Are they in touch with their parents? Are they being taken care of? And this was a just extremely hard case. It was very hard to get through to these kids. But that was my introduction to Children's Harbor.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that Children's Harbor takes all these cases of teenagers and keeps siblings together and provides them a home, not just housing, but provides them a home. And man, I could just see it there, and I could tell like, wow, this is a special organization. This really fills a need in Broward County. And then I learned that they're really kind of the only facility, to my knowledge, that fills that specific need, where a lot of other organizations or foster facilities have a harder time housing teenagers. They specifically focus on teenagers and keeping siblings together and have a maternity house there. And yeah,
that makes them stand out. And it also gives the community a resource,
mm-hmm.
a huge resource, because honestly, once you niche down to helping teenagers, that's like you said, that's a harder one for a lot of organizations to tackle. And I'm glad that Children's Harbor has this program in place so that they can keep the families together as much as possible, especially the kids.
Yeah.
That's
think about who you were as a teenager.
Oh God.
Right? just think about that. And then we've all got our baggage, but these kids these are teenagers just first, right? The hormones are already going. And then you just add in some of like the most ridiculous traumatic stories that you've ever heard, and the abuse or neglect or trafficking or whatever these kids have been through.
Oh yeah.
And so that's going to be a hard individual to break through to. And Children's Harbor doesn't give up on that. They continue to not just, like I said, provide them housing, but provide them a home and really a family around them.
Gives them structure and gives them a place to, work through that trauma.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the most important piece, I really truly believe as well, because once you have that ability to work through it, then you're going to start making progress.
Right.
I think when you start, like you said, if they get split up and they're not with their siblings, they're adding another layer of trauma in some ways.
Yeah,
and that it causes more concern, or more some people or some kids may actually be okay with it and they understand it, but that's not the case for everybody.
Yeah.
So that can really shift the way that they're going to handle things moving forward in the future.
You're already being pulled away from, some trauma or being pulled away from mom and dad, whether there's trauma there or not, there's still mom and dad, right?
Yeah.
And so to have to go through that and lose the support system of your sister that's always been there through the tough times with mom and dad, that's a different level. So, and that's why Children's Harbor is focused on really trying to keep them together in the same place if they can.
No, I think that's beautiful. I think that's well needed. And so I'm glad that Children's Harbor is here to provide that.
For sure.
Can you go a little bit deeper into why you became part of the board?
So first, having been a guardian ad litem and having that firsthand experience of walking into the facility and seeing the way that it was run and seeing all these different teens there and kind of just getting a sense for how well kept this place was and how well organized this place was. And so seeing that kind of piece of it firsthand, then came a second connection of a guy named Eric Chafin. And Eric is one of those guys that knows everybody. He's a connector. If you need anything, you can call Eric, and he's probably got a guy, right? I had known Eric from a couple other organizations when he was with a company called Connections for Business before he transitioned to Children's Harbor. And I had met him in, 3 or 4 different places in the same month. And that's when you go, okay, I got to know this guy. Eric tapped me after I was finishing that guardian ad litem case there. Eric tapped me and asked me to be part of this kind of leadership business council that they had for Browns Harbor, which is another. Children's Harbor has a few different layers to it, and Browns Harbor is the piece of the puzzle that houses 18 to 22-year-olds, I believe, 22 or 23.
Okay.
And so they house them, but there's criteria on what they have to do to stay there. But these are kids that grew up in foster care, so they don't necessarily have all the adulting skills, right? They don't know how to interview for a job or get dressed for a job in a lot of cases. And so what Eric introduced me to over there, this leadership business council, our whole goal there was to try to create connections from our current networks to Browns Harbor so that some of these kids can potentially find job opportunities. And we're trying to do whatever we could to solve transportation issues for them. And my wife works for a custom suit company, so we got some people's suits donated over time and stuff like that. So we're just trying to fill gaps where we can there. And I think I was involved with that for a year or two before starting to get to know Tiffany, the CEO of Children's Harbor. And it just in getting to know her more and seeing more of the organization hands-on and what everybody was doing, I was just like, okay, this is for me. This is where I'm supposed to be giving back. And so just really continue to get involved and show up to their events. And until at one point I was like, hey, tell me about being on the board here. What can I do? And then here, so it's been a couple years now. And so now on the executive committee of the board and chairing the nominating committee to try to now continue to grow the board with the right types of people.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So that's been kind of the journey.
How many people are on the board at Children's Harbor?
I believe we are 12 right now, if I'm not mistaken. When I started, we were 6.
Oh, wow. That's a huge jump.
And this has only been a couple years.
Yeah.
And it was a very conscious effort. And we kind of realized, like, hey, if we want to be able to spread the word on this organization and have more people's networks all collaborating in the same place and more people that we can tell about the organization and make the right introductions. So we consciously decided, okay, we're going to need to grow this board a little more substantially to be able to help out more. And yeah.
No, that makes sense. And honestly, having, 12 people on your board, you actually are building a lot more awareness and more involvement into the community than it probably was at 6.
For sure.
And it's probably not even just double. You'd probably quadrupled or even 10 times it because it does make that much more of an impact. So that's great.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so we'll continue to grow it, but we also have to be really conscious that we don't become a board where you're looked at as a place to climb a social ladder, right? And that making sure that every person that we bring into the board, first of all, really is there for the right reasons as a prerequisite, right? That they're really there because they feel some kind of real connection to this organization and want to be able to help push it further and grow it. And then also that, a board member needs to be able to, you don't necessarily have to be able to stroke a huge check to be a board member. It doesn't hurt, but you do need to be able to help make strategic introductions and be willing to spread the word about the organization to your network so that it continues to grow. The state is not going to fund it, so we have to find a way.
Exactly.
Yeah,
finding all those ways to work around, since if the state's not going to be able to help in that function, where does the money come from, and how do we make that happen? So I do know that you guys have a lot of events.
We do,
which is one of the best ways for you guys to fundraise and get money for keep the organization flowing. Could you talk a little bit about maybe one of the most impactful collaborations that you kind of really saw, or maybe was a huge part of, that made one of those events happen?
Yeah. So I'll talk about a big scale one and a small scale one. And so
thank you for joining me on this episode of Visualize. We hope that the inspiration and practical insights can help you foster stronger connections and meaningful change. Don't forget to subscribe, share the episode, and leave us a review. To learn more about Visuals by Momo and how we support collaboration and storytelling, visit visualsbymomo.com. A huge thank you to everyone out there listening. Until next time, remember, collaboration fuels change, and your connections can inspire the world.